Hello everyone, this is Sergio León, developer advocate from the Forge partner development team in Autodesk. I want to show in this video everything you need in order to start using GitHub for sharing and collaborating with code. Of course, GitHub relies on Git as a distributed version control system for tracking changes in source code during a software development process. It is free and open source. GitHub is a safe place to store your code. It was acquired by Microsoft in 2018, who keep it free to use. And almost every developer uses it to store, share code, and keep track of the history while they are adding, merging new features, or even reverting changes. Here we see an overview of what we are going to do in this video. So I will go through it fast, but we will be searching in GitHub just to get a first feeling of the interface. Then we will see what you need in order to use it. And we will do different workflows or attending certain use cases, like to create a repository, committing changes in this repository, and also collaborating with other developers to forking a repository and doing a pull request. We will see also really fast the issues that how to is another way of collaborating, and as well how to automatically deploy with Heroku. What you need initially is a GitHub account. That is, well, it's straightforward to do. The free account is allowing us to do limited repertory with unlimited collaborators. Then we have the GitHub Desktop application, also free, that can be downloaded in the desktop github.com. There is people who prefer to use the command line directly to use Git. But in our case, we will use the desktop application just for simplicity. You can use any integrated development environment like Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, any other as well. And it will be at the end, it will be needed a Heroku account in case that you want to deploy the application and also automatically deploy the application every time that there is new changes. Here I wanted to show you the GitHub website, where if we want to create a new account, we will come here to sign up. But even without having an account, even without being not yet registered, then we can search for repositories that are relating to Forge. For example, looking for these two keywords, and then we find that there are 213 repositories, code, commits, packages, wikis, and there is even the topic of Autodesk Forge. So we can always come here to search. We can find here repositories like the Visual Studio Code Forge tool, or here there is probably a demo of the Forge digital twin. And there is another website that is called github.com/Autodesk Forge, where we can also find repositories related to that. And here we have other most common use topics like Autodesk BIM 360 or data management, the beware. And here we can filter by language if we want. Or for example, we can say that we want to look for Postman collection and find which repository had these Postman collections. It is also worth to mention that in the Code Samples website, you will find that some of them, or at least when it is a demo or when it is a prototype, they also link, for example, this one, they also link to a GitHub website where you can see the README and also clone this repository later on. In the Forge showroom, you will also find demos, different demos, and most of them they also have the GitHub link to it. So It's really interesting to not only for collaborating, to see to have a GitHub account, also in order to search for demos and in order to clone them, to clone um, code and to be able to merge. So from here, I would like to move again to the main GitHub account. Once that you create a GitHub account, you can sign it here. I just created one today with my like a private account in order to simulate someone who is or to simulate someone who is already starting and creating a new repository and how it's going to share it. So let me access here. 1 second. There we go. And this is the the starting page that we will see, where usually all the repositories are listed here on the left side. To comment on this point that GitHub offer more than one account. One is the free account. With the one we have more than enough for what we need in terms. It has unlimited repositories. You can set private or public repositories. You can define in case of having a private repository, you can add new collaborators. For the free account, is, as I say, is more than enough. So in our first steps, what I would like to do is to create a new repository. So let's call it a Forge proof of concept. We can add here a description. And as I say, we can set it like public so anyone can see this repository, or we can even set it as private. We can convert in any moment any repository that is public to private and the other way around. And once that in case of being private, the only thing that you have to do is to set who are the collaborators who can also access and see your code. It's nice to initialize this repository with a README, just to say, well, how, yeah, to say some instruction, for example, how the application works or what are the main functionality. And it's also interesting to add the git ignore. In this case, GitHub allows us to choose, for example, some of the IDE that we are using. Like if we are using Visual Studio Code, then we can add Visual Studio Code, or if we are uh, using Node.js, then we can Node, then we can add it here. And what it's going to do is this is a place where we indicate, okay, all the files who has this format, or all the files who are contained in this folder, or all to specify certain files that we don't want to be uploaded, to be committed in this repository. Yeah, also it's interesting in certain cases to add a license to it. So let's start here with indicating Visual Code, Visual Studio, for example, and let's create our first repository. There it goes. So here we have our new repository that is with the name that we gave, the Forge POC. And what we can see is that GitHub already created the two files that we already set up, the git ignore and the readme file. And we can also realize here that we have one commit and one branch. So as we were saying, the repository is a container where we have all our code, and this repository with all our code is going to have a lot of changes who are going to be tracked. How this changing as track, or who defines the evolution of the repository, are these commits. So every time we want to save changes, we will create a new commit. And with this commit, log message uh, will be also a log. So in this case, it's just called initial commit, and this we can go even inside and see that it is affecting two files. So it's completely creating the git ignore and also adding the readme file. I'm going to dismiss this. So here we can see in already with the on the interface we can see the code. We can have issues. These are for collaborators who want to create a new issue, or it can be on the behavior, or it can be a bug, or they may even it can be a new feature. Pull request that we will talk about this later. And one that is important here, there is on well projects. We can create projects, security, insights, but if we go to settings, then we will have all the settings of this repository. And here down we can, for example, change as we are talking this repository to make it public. So right now this repository is initially we did it private, but we can also make it public here. We can also transfer the ownership, archive it, or delete it. In this case, for example, let's make it public. Then we have to type here and edit. Right now it will be available and the people can search for it. So the next step will be let's load or let's clone. That is this how it is called. So to clone locally this repository. That is to make a copy of it. That is still linked to our original repository that is created here in GitHub. For that, we will use the desktop GitHub client that we can download from this website. So in this case, I have it for downloading for macOS, but it's also available the Windows version. So the next step will be if we come back to our repository to clone or download our repository locally in our PC or Mac. And for that, then we have this green button where we can copy the URL where that has a Git extension. We copy all of it, and then in our clients that I already download, let me GitHub Desktop app. Let's open it. Here I have it, and then we have the option to clone a repository from internet. In this case, I'm going to click there. Then we have to select URL, paste, and clone. Important here is not only the URL, is also to indicate where we want to locate this new the repository. The repository will be a folder. It can be saved, wherever you want. But and also, well, it can also be moved later on from one place to another, as far as what we move is the main folder. Let's do it here, and it's going to go call Forge, clone, and voila, it is done. Let's say now that with our client, what we want to do right now is we have been working in in an application. As a sample, we can take the one from the Learn Forge tutorial. Let's say we are in the stage of viewing, just view your models. So we have been following the tutorial and we have all the code, and then we have this application. So what we want to do is to do another commit where we can commit all these files. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open the file folder. It's telling me that it's saved here in Forge port. Right now we can only see the README file, but if I unhide the hidden files, then we can see we also have the git ignore, and as it is, this is a working copy, then it's also saving a .git folder. Never, in this case, try to delete this, because then we will lose all the information that Git is saving in order to track the repository. So in this case, what I'm gonna do is, these are the files I have been working um, for the view models. These are the ones I'm going to take, and I'm going to move them there. So I'm going to say there is already a README. I'm going to replace that one. And so I'm saving the new files. And if I come here to the client, then I can see that it's adding these 16 new files. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a new commit with all of them. Always summarize, a commit message is needed. So I'm going to say first, or view models, first commit view models, and I commit to master. One that I commit to master, I can always see the history here. So this is just right now what I'm saving. And we have all these changes. What we are doing is we just commit them locally. So if we want them to also be in GitHub, the repository that is remote repository, then we have to push our changes to the region. So in this case, we click here, and then what it's going to do is it's going to upload all these files there. And let's see that reflected here in GitHub. So if I refresh here, I should be able now to see, okay, yeah. We can see here all the rest of the files that we just committed. One of the cool things is we can always modify our files here directly from GitHub interface. So for example, now I see here that we do save this DS store, and this is something that we can come here and, for example, say, okay, I want to delete this file and kind of create DS. So it's important to create a new commit with a log message and to delete it. And another thing we are going to do is in the git ignore, we are going to include this kind of files. So we can here on the interface come and also edit and say, okay, I want to void all the TS store, but also, for example, everything that is coming from Visual Studio Code, in case that we are using this IDE, then it's good to save it here. And then we can here update to avoid this store and Visual Studio Code files. So commit changes, and then we can see that now we will have probably in the main Forge repository than we already have for commits. Now that we have seen how to synchronize all our code, the next step will be to how do we collaborate with this code? How do we ask someone to review it, to check for bugs, to check for something that is not working? So in this case, for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring here another window, and I'm going to log in with GitHub, but this time instead of using the username I was using here, that is, I call it like external one, I'm going to use the one that I'm using in Autodesk. So in this case, singing, and then Sergio this one. There you go. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the repository we did. That is, it is at the beginning it was private, but then we did it we did it public. But this will work as well if you have a private repository and then you add me as a collaborator. So here I'm going to look for the external user that is here as a user. Let's go. And let's see that he has a project made in JavaScript. That is his first repository. Yeah. And what we are going to do is to fork it. So the fork, it can be, yeah, it can be from us, from the board advocacy to help, but it can also can be down for another developer also in your company. And when you are forking a repository, what you are creating is a copy of it under the GitHub ID or the GitHub account. And any changes that are made to the original repository will be also reflected in the fork repository, in this copy that is this creating. Let's click there. So start creating it. So from his repository is going to make this copy on my one. So this is our fork repository. As we can see, it contains the same commit as it contained before and one branch, master branch. And now what I can do is I can try to suggest, I can try to do changes here. But the commits that I will do, they will only be saved here in this one, in the fork one. If I want this one to go to the original one, then I will have to generate a new pull request. And this is what we are going to do. So let's take, for example, here in the model derivative, let's say that we had a meeting, and in this meeting we have discussed and we have said, okay, then it is much better only to process 3D models and not to use 2D models. So I'm going to delete this line of code. I'm going to do it directly here through the GitHub interface. And I'm going to say, okay, we just want to process only 3D models. And I made this commit. So once this is done, so here we can see the change, then I can go here to the main code and say that I want to do a new pull request. In the new pull request, it will mean, okay, I want you to see the changes that we have been doing to this repository. And here, for example, we can also see the differences. Usually in red and with this minus at the beginning is when it is indicating a line that has been deleted, and the plus is a new line that have been added. So in this case, it's just, well, deleting this 2D part. One and here, then I can say, yes, please, let's create a pull request. So process only the 3D models. And then here I can even here the comment add discuss. Create pull request. And this branch has no conflicts with the branch mate. This is because if in case that there are more than one people that are working on the same file on the same and they modify the same line of code, then this can generate a conflict. In the case there is a conflict, they will tell you here, and then there is a way to resolve this conflict. This can also happen when we are pushing to the origin repository, and yeah, there is here on the web, but also on the GitHub desktop application, there is a visor where you can see these differences. Even in Visual Studio Code, you have Git integrated in one of the tools that is integrated, and you can also see it there. So if now I go to the other user, then let's update. And then we can see here that there is a new pull request. If we come here, then we can say, okay, there is a new pull request created by this user. And here you have two options. You can say, okay, I'm sorry, I don't like it. Or in this case, you can comment it here, you can comment, and then, well, still this is the message that the other user will receive, or you can accept. In case of accepting, what it's going to do is going to merge. Confirm merge. So it's going to bring these changes to the repository. And now if we go to the code, then we will see there will be a new commit. So there is a process only 3 theater models, and it was merging this pull request, and that the file contains those changes. Model derivative. So it was changed here, and we can even see in the blame. This is interesting to see when and who did the changes of every line of code. So in the last part of this demo, what we are going to do is to focus on Heroku. Heroku is a cloud platform service that enables developers to build and run applications. It is really easy to use, flexible, and allows us to connect our application here in Heroku to the application repo in GitHub and deploy it manually or automatically when there are new changes. This is the main dashboard that we will see. The process to create a new application is quite straightforward. So we have to create a new application, then we give it a name. In this case, I can say my Forge POC. In this case, this name has to be unique because Roku by default is using a subdomain to deploy it. Then choose a region and create the application. So the main two parts that we will see is deploy and settings. Let's go through the deploy parameters. And one of the first things that is you will see here is GitHub. So you can connect it to GitHub. In this case, while clicking here, usually it will ask you to connect it. And here we can search for the repositories. If you can even connect more than one GitHub account. In this case, we already can find the repo, and then we connect it. We have to choose what is the branch that we want to deploy, in this case the master one, and then we can already deploy it. But before deploying it, then we have to remember that with Forge we will need to also indicate some other parameters like the variables, the client ID and the client secret, and this is something that we can do here in settings. So in settings we have all the information that we already introduced. We can also change the name, and here there is the section of reveal config bars. So here it will be the place, and in our case for Forge we have to indicate the variables that we can get from the Forge website when we are creating the app, the Forge app. I already did one for this, for the purpose of this demo, so I'm going already to copy them. We will need two things: the Forge client ID, in this case is this one. Let's add it. And we also will need the client secret. That I'm going to copy and paste here. once that we have this, we have to consider the build packs that we are using. In this case, it was Node.js, so we can select this one. But in case that is not one of the build packages that are, or build packs that are listed here, then we can search for them. For example, in the case from .NET Core, we can search for one because it was not listed there. .NET Core, and then Heroku build pack. And then we will find that there are a lot of them. For example, this one is one that I know Augusto was already using. And in this case, we will need to copy this URL and use it here in this part. But well, in our case, because we know that this is Node.js, then we will use this one. There is other options for us that are also interesting, like the domain. So we can also deploy inside our own domain or the organization domain, and we can also transfer the ownership. And here is also the option to delete the application. So in our case for Forge, once that we have the variables set up, then we can try to do a manual deploy. And what it will do, it will just catch all the code that we have in the GitHub repository and deploy that. We can see the log here. Also, we have the activity tab where we can see all the actions that we are taking. Here we can see that it is building processes. In case there is an error, also we can see here. So the log, in case there is an error. And let's see, so it was already deployed. And we can access to it here, open up. We'll open a new tab. And here we are. So it's already deployed. So one thing that is really cool about this is that if we enable to automatically enable automatic deploys, every time that we update the code in GitHub, it will automatically also deploy here the code. And this is something that we can see now. Let's activate the automatic deploy. And now if we let's open our code, the code that we have, let's say in Visual Studio. Make this window is smaller. And let's say that I want to change, so in this case it's Autodesk Forge tutorial, I want to change the title of this, just to do a small sample. So let's go to public, index, and then here, let's change the title and say, okay, this is my awesome app. So we just change the title. Just be aware that also here in Visual Studio Code, we have integrated already some functionality to see the changes that we are doing in Git. But in this case, let's continue using the GitHub Desktop. From the demo before, we were doing local changes to the original repository in GitHub. So the first thing we will have to do while coming here to the client is to do a pull from the region to bring all the changes that we have on our remote repository, the region one. Now it already detected that we did one change here in the index HTML. So I'm going to update title. I'm going to commit this chain and to push this chain to the remote origin repo. And this is going to trigger, because we have it automatically connected already and linked to Heroku, this is going to trigger in Heroku. Let's go to the activity. It's going to trigger an update. We can already see here that is updating, it's building it, and it will deploy it. So if we wait exactly until it is finished, and now if I update here, it should update the title. Yeah, there you go. So this is a really cool feature because then we can deploy really fast and see all the changes that we are doing to our repo and to our application. In order to finish, I think it is worth to mention some Git extra topics in case that, for example, you don't want to use the GitHub client, you want to use directly the command line interface, or you want to get access to other advanced topics. Then as a first tips in order to give you, I will comment these ones, like in case that you want to use Git in the console, it's important to configure kill with these different commands that is setting up the configuring the user information for the local repository, setting the name that you want to appear on the commits, the email address. This color UI is a way to enable some helpful colorization on the command line output. And also you can specify what will be your default editor while committing, for example, messages or resolving conflicts. Also, it will be needed to add the SSH protocol or the SSH key in your GitHub account from your working directory. And it's important also to mention that you will have to be aware of this process that we have not been talking about, that is the staging area. So what we are usually doing until now is we working in locally, and then we have been committing in the repository. And there is this intermediate step that is the git add process that in the case of using the GitHub Desktop is the one that we have seen here when we select the different files that we want to commit. So it will be something similar, but even here we can even select not only files, we can even select lines from a file and only try to commit this part. And it is also worth to mention that we saw before in some areas that these branches, and this is, for example, a good example of the normal development process where you have a main branch that is, for example, the master, where you are releasing and deploying. This is the initial production version. And then you have a development branch where you are developing different features, bug fixes. And then usually what is happening is we bring the features from one branch to another, and these are the one that is a next production release, for example, in this case. So this is a good example of how to work with branches. So with that, wish you the best of luck using GitHub. I'm sure that your workflow will speed up. See you around.